What's up, everybody, and welcome to ClearTalk. So, in this video, we were little by little getting through things. In this video, we're going to be talking about Gaza, Israel, the Middle East in general. Trying to just sort of give an update and get up to where we are currently from where I last covered. So, thank you very much for joining me, and you know what to do. So, do the damn thing, and let's get to it. Um, so Gaza, Israel, where we last, pretty much left off was where, we were having proposals and stuff made, trying to do peace talks, and in every single way, Israel was trying to block it, or they were trying to, ask for things that was absolutely not going to happen, and uh, the things that Hamas was asking for, clearly, Israel would want Israel, and Netanyahu and everybody around him don't want to agree to anything that would be even remotely fair um, in this situation. They want nothing to do with the war ending in any way, form, or fashion. They want it to continue on. They want to be able to completely eradicate the area, remove everybody from it, ethnic cleansing. That is what they want. That's what they are asking for. That's what they are publicly speaking about. They want nothing to do with ending this war, not until it is emptied and they have completely taken siege and taken over that area. And annexed it. I mean, that is what they are clearly want. And anything around, Hamas or the Palestinian people staying there, anything around, a two-state solution or even a one-state solution or anything, I mean, they want nothing to do with that at all. And that has pretty much been their state of argument ever since Trump brought it up. Ever since Trump brought up about owning the Gaza Strip, clearing it out, using it for real estate property and all that kind of stuff. His beautiful ocean view, with a beautiful Trump building there, and blah blah blah. Absolutely ridiculous, absolutely appalling, and in every possible way needs to be rejected and never allowed to happen. So no peace talks have actually been able to go through, clearly. And now, or what was happening was that they were doing a complete blockade on Gaza for over 90 days. They were not allowing any humanitarian aid to get into this strip whatsoever. And you had widespread famine happening, people starving, dehydrated, even quite a few dying from that, including children. And it was just causing global, international outrage to the degree that it even started putting pressure on Israel to do something, right? And I mean, even some Western countries that typically, to some degree, kind of still, support Israel, and we're still sending weapons or still sending some sort of aid to Israel to help go on. It even started crossing their red lines to the part that they started actually. To this point, there's quite a few European countries, and even including Canada and a few others, Australia, I think, even that have now done sanctions on some of the political people like Smotrich and what's the other guy? Is it Gallant? Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, and are and there's even been some even civilians, like I think it was in the other day in France. I want to say there was a shipyard that the workers refused to load ammunition that was boarding to go to Israel, uh, or weaponry or something, some kind of something that was being boarded to go to Israel. They were refusing to load it, and basically in protest of what was continuing to go on. Wild. Okay, great thing, great stuff. Shout out to them. So what has happened, because Israel was pressured, and so much backlash is being given for their complete blockade, they then turned around and uh, basically blocked all humanitarian aid groups that were like UN oriented or anything like that. And they created, along with the U.S. assistance, created their own humanitarian aid group, or to facilitate aid to the Gaza Strip, basically privatizing this with a couple of companies that were Israeli or American companies or groups, and set up four locations where humanitarian aid was to be collected by over, or roughly 2 million Palestinians. 4 locations. Now, to help you understand that, humanitarian aid groups that previously ran humanitarian aid in Gaza, that were UN, like UNRWA and many others, they had established like over 400 locations. Okay, 400 to 4. That's what we're talking about here. Absolutely ridiculous, and no way in form or fashion would that condition or that setup be able to be successful. And Israel knew it. They were purposely doing that because they knew that it would cause chaos. They knew it would cause large groups of people trying to come to these locations to get aid. They were purposely placed in locations where people had to take long journeys in order to get there. There were cages basically built around these locations so they could even lock these people in to prevent them from going back. Sorry, I have like this weird hiccup thing going on. Knowing that when grouping all these people together, then they could turn around, or their, the IDF or anybody, that wanted to, could then turn around and argue that, oh, this is like a mob, this is like a swarm of people that are, and so we have to, we feel like we or might be in danger or an attack, so we need to, defend ourselves, or defend our workers, that are humanitarian workers that are, running this site. So what happens? Of course, clearly, just like it's happened before, shots run out. People are shot. People are injured. People are killed. This is a complete setup by Israel. This is using food as a means of war and control, and as a means of killing, basically. Okay. Knowing that these people are starving, and you're creating conditions that in any other, or and otherwise people would not even bother with trying to come get that aid, except for the fact that they are in the conditions that they are, starving and dehydrated and on the verge of famine and death, that they have no choice, even though they know that they are coming to an area that they could potentially not come back from. They're taking that risk and going just in hopes that they can get some food and go get back safely. But then on top of that, if that wasn't worse enough, the food that Israel was giving out at these 4 locations was food that, in no form or fashion, on a humanitarian aid like point of view, when it comes to trying, the idea of humanitarian aid is to provide goods in a fashion, in a way where people would be able to, like, nutriently, health wise, be able to gain something from. To humanitarian aid groups work up food supplies and, like, what they are going to give in their aid based on nutritional value and what it can actually give effectively for the people in whatever condition that they are in. Israel was giving, like, rice, basically some of the same things we talked about from, like, CCOT, where they were given food that gives an absolutely no nutritional value. It was basically meant to not do that, so that the people would over time starve, or would over time become um, unhealthy, or whatever the case, malnourished, the word I was looking for. Basically the same thing here. It's like rice, uh, noodles, and one other thing, all of which needed, like, all of these items were dry, needed water. There were items that would need water, would need to be cooked, and there's no clean water in Gaza. They wouldn't even be able to really cook this food. And like I said, this food, rice and pasta, does not give the type of nutrients needed for people in their condition to actually gain health and nutrition from. So it was all a setup. It was all purpose. It was all purpose to save face, to make it look like they're actually doing something when they're not. They're not helping the situation. They're making it worse, creating the conditions to get worse, creating conditions in where they could then turn around and argue that, they needed to shoot into the crowd to break it up, or control it, because it was just so many people and there was the fear of it getting out of control. So that's what's been going on. And that in itself has then turned even more heads across Western countries and the rest of the global international community. And even thrown up some concerns, even more here in the U.S., as crazy as that may actually sound. To the point that even the United States is, to some degree, showing a little bit of annoyance with it. There's been some reporting, albeit questionable, some reporting of Trump being frustrated, of some of the regime being frustrated with these actions and the way it's looks. Some of the rhetoric that is coming out from Netanyahu still, even after all this, and the upcry and that is happening, with society in the United States growing more and more concerned and aware and frustrated with the conditions that are going on there as well. And even domestically in Israel, you're now having marches, from my understanding, marches going on from Tel Aviv to Gaza, from Israelis who I think is probably more concerned to the families and people who are in support of like hostages that still remain there, and they are still not prioritizing to get back because Israel's basically said they don't give a damn about them. And when I say Israel, I mean like the government and people in charge, the leadership, and Yahoo and whatnot. There are protests, basically March protests happening in Israel by citizens. I don't know what degree that it is. Maybe a couple thousand or something. I don't know. But it is still internal pressures that are growing, dissent that is growing, even within Israeli society, continuing to grow. Even though that might be few and far between, it still is growing. Because we know previously when things like some data has come out, about this, Israel society at large, mostly being perfectly okay with what was going on in Gaza. The only concern that most people had was with was trying to get hostages back. But as far as actions and stuff going on in Gaza and support for, the bombing and killing people and potential removal of Palestinians and whatnot, annexing the land, whatever, most Israelis did not have a problem with that, or at least that was what was previously polled. But who knows? Haven't seen recent polls lately if there's been a slight change or fluctuation, shift in the society of Israel when it comes to that kind of stuff. Who knows? But previously it wasn't too good. So that's what's going on and continuing to going on in Israel, in Gaza. So basically nothing's really changed. If anything, things are continuing to get worse. Although international frustration, even amongst leaders, is growing and growing and growing, and little by little applying more and more and more pressure on Israel. It is late to the game, but it is, and it's not happening as fast as any of us would prefer, but it is happening. You also have a uptick in activism that is going on. What's happened this past weekend, if you've noticed, unless you've been under a rock, you had a humanitarian aid sea-bound flotilla. The infamous, at this point, Greta Thunberg, I think, is that how you say her last name? Was upon this flotilla along with a few others. There was, I think, one or two other quietly like famous people on it, or to some degree, famous, like actor or something like that. But there's like 12 or 13 or something around there, people that were on this flotilla taking humanitarian aid in attempt to take humanitarian aid to Gaza. Now, admittedly, and I think it was pretty much clear, at least under the surface, that the effect that the amount of humanitarian aid that they had on this flotilla was minimal. Granted, it was still aid. It would help somebody. Maybe only a few hundred people or families or whatever, potentially. I mean, I don't know how far it could spread out. At this point, they probably know how to make the minimal amount of stuff last as long as they can. But no, it wasn't going to make a huge impact on humanitarian efforts. But kind of underneath that, the point was to point out and reveal the blockade issue of getting humanitarian aid to Gaza by Israel. So they were going on at a risk to take this flotilla and try to make it to Gaza. Well, clearly that did not happen. Israel, in international waters, so legally they had no right to do these actions, but they made actions to take over the flotilla via drones. They dropped some type of chemical substance onto the boat as well. I don't know if it was what type of substance it was. It was some type of white substance that I assume would sort of either neurologically, or maybe not neurologically, that might be pushing it, but like in some kind of way create some type of fear or anxiety. It may have been nothing, but it just may have been a scare tactic, but it couldn't, I don't know if it was dangerous or not, but some kind of substance was dropped on him. And then they proceeded to board this flotilla, confiscate the cell phones and other communication devices. They blocked any kind of signal radars from being able to, send out any kind of signal. And they then took these individuals back to Israel and towed the flotilla to one of the docks there in Israel to basically take control of it and prevent it from going to Gaza. They then turned around, and I think the majority of the people they deported back to their nations of origin. Like Greta herself was sent back to Sweden, I think, or something, or the UK, one or the other, that she was sent back to. But from my understanding, there was a few of them that were actually still held, potentially even now, and potentially even like charges being placed against them. I don't know any further details on that, or whether or not, to what degree that is. That's just what I'm hearing and seeing. It could come out that has changed, at some point here in this near, future. But that's the last thing I've seen and heard on that. So it did exactly what, to some degree, that what they wanted, was to show that Israel is taking full control and blockading aid from getting to Gaza by any means, even doing so in international waters where they, by law, do not have any jurisdiction to perform such actions. There are also some other activism going on. I'm not sure if it's being reported much, mainly because it may not particularly come over the radar of most outlets. But there are some land march activism happening. Two of them, as a matter of fact. One is coming from Tanzania or Tunzania, wherever that, however you say that country, and some other area or whatever. They are doing a march across the North Africa. That will, from my understanding, it takes them through Egypt, and ultimately they're going to go through Egypt and up to the Rafah crossing. So they're not taking any type of humanitarian aid. This is solely a march by those people who are in support. This is activism from from a couple of different places, I think, but it's mainly from these particular two places. And they are going up there, but the idea is for them to make an attempt to get into the Rafah crossing to help with, if they can, I guess, help in some form or fashion in Gaza. But the idea is that they are trying to identify or to reveal that the expectation is that they will not be able to get in, basically. So they're making this journey in protest, in march, in solidarity with Palestinians to go to the Rafah crossing, to argue their way into Gaza with the idea that they are more or less not going to be allowed in because of the blockade that Israel has, even on the Rafah crossing, which is supposed to be controlled by Egypt. And that's, which we know has not been controlled by Egypt for months now. And then there's another march from people, I think, actually in Egypt. Or this march, I think, might be a groupings of people from like upwards of 30 countries that are kind of doing the same similar thing. Once again, not doing any type of humanitarian aid, but they are making a march from some location in Egypt up to Rafah for the same type of idea. And this is happening. The first one, I think, is already in route. The idea is that they are going to be at Rafah, I think, within the next week or so. Something like that. And then the other one, I think, is supposed to be happening later on in the month or within the next week or so. Is supposed to start happening. That, who knows? I don't know if these two are trying to coordinate to where they all reach Rafah at the same time. I have no clue. Or maybe just one after the other. Maybe they have no coordination at all. I mean, maybe they're not connected at all. I really know. But the idea is to reveal, once again, trying to argue their way into the Rafah crossing to help Palestinians. And the idea is that they are assuming that Israel will not allow them in. So we have that type of stuff going on too. And like I said, that seems kind of performative to some degree. So I feel like it's not going to really be talked about much as far as media is concerned and whatnot. But this is the type of activism that is happening in solidarity, in protest, by just, organizational groups who are wanting to prove a point. And the idea and the point is that there is a blockade by Israel in every form or fashion, preventing any type of aid or help or assistance to the people of Gaza, whether by sea, by land, even by air, whatever. That's the point. So you have that kind of stuff going on as well. Now, the other big elephant in the room there is, of course, the other big portion or big part of the Middle East, and that is Iran. Talks with Iran are not going very well because the original proposal that we sent to them basically was damn near the agreement that Trump ripped up, in his first administration. It's pretty much that same agreement, basically, with maybe a slight difference in how the allowance of how the enrichment of uranium would progress or like, to like the original idea was to allow them that they would reduce uranium to a certain percentage. I think it was like 3 point some percent, which was actually from the original deal. And then over time, based on like Iran wanted basically that over time, based on good condition, good action on their part, being like, you think of like somebody in prison or whatever, good behavior, they get more and more, ability to do things, or eventually can get out early or whatever the case. Like, good behavior, good showing um uh in audits and stuff that would be happening on them would eventually allow them to move that percentage up, to assist them to a certain degree, anyways, to assist them in like actual consumer like goods, based in nuclear, like nuclear energy goods for for citizens of the country. That's kind of what Iran wants. Um, but after that proposal was basically somewhat given to Iran, you started then getting the rhetoric from people in the administration, and then eventually even Trump started spewing it as well about zero tolerance, and that or zero and zero like enrichment period, like zero nuclear enrichment whatsoever, um, which is an absolute no-go, and quite frankly is against international law or international acceptance for any uh, like sovereign nation. By UN standards, every sovereign nation, from my understanding, has the right to like to some sort of nuclear enrichment or uranium enrichment for energy, and for the public. Uh, there should be no complete blockade on any sovereign nation for that. So for us to try to make an agreement to argue against any possible uh, nuclear enrichment is dead in the water automatically. And like I said, technically against international like law and or international like uh, I guess respect, or whatever. Well, I don't know, the word is that I'm looking for is not quite there. But so that has already caused issues with the agreement. Iran is not agreeing to it. Is arguing back against it. They themselves are trying to give a proposal that U.S. continues with their rhetoric, uh, or the administration continues with their rhetoric, is not going to do anything. And Trump and in his regime have argued that if Iran doesn't agree to this, then we are going to basically attack them. There would be military uh, force to some degree, basically to pressure them to accept it. That's I'm assuming the idea. Now, Iran, in response to that, has said that they're presenting their proposal, and they will turn around, and if any type of military action is made on them, then they will return that a response on military uh, bases and stuff around the area, with the intent to potentially even harm, our people. So then that has turned around and caused America, the United States, to start pulling people, and trying to get people out of certain areas, in like in Syria and Iraq, all surrounding areas. They're trying to pull individuals from those embassies and bases and stuff like that, to prevent, because the idea is that this is not going to happen. We're going to have to, we're going to have to uh, show some type of force to try to push them into this agreement. And they've already said that they are going to not adhere to that force. So there's potential and a good chance, high percentage, that things are going to escalate. So they're already preparing for it. And to me, that tells me if you're already pulling people, that means you have no intent. Like, you expect it to happen. If you are going to the extremes of going ahead and pulling people from all different kinds of locations to protect them from any type of harm, or that you expect is going to happen, that means that you have the intent to make that harm happen. So the agreements with Iran, I feel, are completely dead right now, and escalation is going to more or less grow. So there's that. So as if we don't have enough issues going on domestically right now with shit, going down in LA, potentially it's spreading to other cities across the United States. Not to mention the economic woes that we are still under, due to, stock market fluctuations that are still kind of happening here and there. Price fluctuations are still happening here and there because of tariffs in certain areas, and the concern that that will eventually come back. Concerns around immigration still going on. All these different domestic issues we still have to worry about. Also, things going to shit in a handbasket in the Middle East between Iran, the U.S., Israel, Gaza. Luckily right now the issue with the Houthis is kind of under control, because there's a sort of a temporary agreement right now for that to, at least between the Houthis and the U.S. anyways. They're still attacking, I think, Israeli stuff here and there, but yeah, it's not getting any better. Shit is still hitting the fan. And while the international outcry and the international concern and international action to try to thwart what's going on in the Middle East is on the rise, and is the concern is growing and actions are growing, and in places that we previously didn't see, it's still not enough. It's still not enough, and it's still not fast enough. It's still not the type of outrage that everybody should be having right now. That we are allowing people to be completely, damn near eradicated. A genocide happening, ethnic cleansing happening, killing on a day-to-day basis, starving on a day-to-day basis. That there hasn't been a bigger pushback at this point for this is mind blowing. It is, like I said, even people that previously weren't making as big a deal about it, or found ways to try to defend certain aspects of it, are starting to finally hit red lines and finally go, you know what, this shit's even too far for me. like the Pierce Morgans of the world, and even some other like right wing. Was it not banning, but the other like crazy, and maybe banning. I don't know. Even to some degree, Joe Rogan has even, I think, um, began to have some issue with it. Like there are media figures, there are GOP people, even, and most certainly citizens that are starting to realize and that shit is going too far. But still, the outcry is still not where it needs to be. Like, how long does it take? How long does it take for a civilization to realize that actions being allowed? I mean, in 2025, in 2025, like I said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure as fuck rhymes. Um, now that I'm full time, I will be sticking to this. I will be updating much more frequently. I will be keeping an eye on it. I already personally keep an eye on it damn near on a daily basis. But I will be trying to keep you updated as much as I feel needed, as much as I possibly can. Every time something in any substance really that shows maybe some shift, I will talk about it here and I will update you and give you what I know, in my opinion. Because it needs to be talked about and it needs to be just pounded to the wall. Because people are not outraged. People are not angry enough. And I'm really holding back right now because it is late and people are in the next room trying to watch a movie and I'm trying not to fucking scream at the goddamn mic. Let me know what you think about everything going on, about the so-called humanitarian aid that Israel is providing at their 4 locations. The actions being taken there on that. The continued destruction and genocidal nature of things going on there. Peace talks. Iran. These activism attempts. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you agree with me? Do you not agree with me? You have, some things to add to that, to the conversation. Please do in the comments. And thank you very much for joining me. And until next time, peace. Clear Talk.